At a live TV charity expo, a giant of a man, the reigning world's strongest man, made a fatal mistake. He challenged a quiet master sitting ringside, not knowing his own mountain-like strength would become his very downfall. The main hall of the Titan Fitness Expo was a cathedral of human ambition. Lasers sliced through a fine mist of atomized energy drinks, painting neon logos on chrome-plated weight machines and the glistening shoulders of fitness models. The air, thick with the scent of cinnamon-flavored protein powder and ozone, buzzed with the low thunder of dropped weights and the high-pitched chatter of thousands of attendees. This wasn't just an event, it was the heart of the modern fitness empire, broadcast live to millions. High above the floor, in a glass-paneled broadcast booth, two voices narrated the spectacle. "Folks, what you're seeing is pure, unadulterated power." Marcus "Iron Arm" Thorne boomed, his voice a gravelly remnant of his Mr. Olympia days. His biceps, still impressively round under a tight polo shirt, strained against the fabric. This is what strength is all about. Tangible, measurable, undeniable. Beside him, Chloe Lim, a top fitness tech influencer half his age, adjusted the lapel mic on her sleek blazer. Her eyes, sharp and analytical, scanned the data feeds on her tablet. "It's definitely a spectacle, Marcus. Gunnar's engagement metrics are off the charts. Every brand he touches turns to gold. But spectacle isn't always substance." Marcus chuckled, a dismissive rumble. "Kid, when you can bend a steel bar with your bare hands, that is the substance." His gaze, and the gaze of every camera in the arena, was fixed on the main stage. There, under the glare of a dozen spotlights, stood Gunnar The Viking Bjornsson. He was less a man and more a monument carved from granite and Norse myth. Standing well over 6.5 feet tall, with a braided, sun-bleached beard and arms covered in intricate Viking knot tattoos, he was the reigning world's strongest man. He was arrogance made flesh, and the crowd adored him for it. But not everyone was caught in the gravitational pull of the spectacle. In the front row of the VIP section, seated with an almost unnerving stillness, was Steven Seagal. He wore a simple, high-collared black silk jacket, his dark hair pulled back. Unlike the other celebrities who preened for the cameras, Seagal sat like the calm eye of a hurricane. His presence was an anachronism in this temple of noise and vanity. He observed, his gaze missing nothing, his posture radiating a quiet authority that needed no spotlight to be felt. Beside him, his manager, Leo Vance, a man who perpetually looked stressed, fidgeted with his phone. "I still don't know why we're here, Steven," Leo muttered, leaning in. "This isn't our world. It's all noise." Seagal didn't turn. His eyes were fixed on the stage, watching Gunnar lift a colossal, perfectly round Atlas stone onto a platform. To understand strength, Seagal's voice was low, almost a whisper, yet it cut through the din. "You must first understand what it is not." Gunnar slammed the 400-pound Atlas stone onto its pedestal with a thunderous crack that echoed through the hall. He threw his head back and roared, a primal sound that sent a fresh wave of adrenaline through the crowd. They roared back, a unified chorus of worship. He grabbed the microphone, his massive hand swallowing it whole. "That's gravity," he bellowed, sweat glistening on his forehead. "That's physics. Undeniable. You can't talk your way out of it, you can't meditate your way around it." He paced the stage, his every step a minor tremor. In the booth, Marcus was ecstatic. "You hear that, Chloe? That's a man who understands reality. No tricks, no fancy talk. Just pure, raw power." Chloe's expression was unreadable. "He's certainly loud." Gunnar paused, letting the cheers wash over him. Then, a smirk spread across his face. "You know, they invite all kinds of people to these things. They talk about total fitness, mind-body connection, they talk about martial arts." He said the last two words with dripping contempt, as if they were a joke. "I see these guys, these so-called masters, talking about flowing like water and redirecting energy." He made a show of limp wrist, flowing motions, mocking the practice. A section of the crowd laughed. Let me tell you something. When 350 pounds of pure Viking power is coming at you, you don't flow. You get broken. The main camera director, sensing drama, slowly zoomed in on Steven Seagal in the front row. His face appeared on the giant screens flanking the stage. He remained perfectly still, his expression a blank canvas. Gunnar saw it. He saw the feed on the monitor, and his smirk widened into a predatory grin. This was an opportunity too perfect to pass up. He pointed a finger thick as a sausage directly at the screen. Hey! Speaking of which, we have a legend in the house tonight, don't we? Mr. Steven Seagal. The crowd's murmur shifted, a current of confusion and anticipation running through it. Star of the silver screen. Master of Aikido. He spat the word out. The art of not getting hit. Very impressive in the movies. He lowered his voice, making it a conspiratorial growl. But this is reality, Mr. Seagal. So I have a challenge for you. A simple test of philosophies. You come up here, right now. An assistant hurried onto the stage with a roll of white tape. Gunnar directed him to mark out a circle on the floor, about 10 feet in diameter. No fighting. No striking. Nothing so messy, Gunnar taunted. You stand in the circle with me. All you have to do is move me out of it. Let's see if your energy redirection can move a mountain. A collective gasp sucked the air out of the hall. The buzzing energy of the expo floor froze, replaced by a silence so profound you could hear the hum of the stage lights. In the broadcast booth, Chloe Lim's fingers froze over her tablet. Marcus Thorne leaned forward, his smug expression replaced by one of pure disbelief. Is he serious? Chloe whispered. The kid's got guts, I'll give him that, Marcus muttered, though a flicker of unease crossed his face. This is either the greatest publicity stunt of all time, or the dumbest. All eyes were on Steven Seagal. For a long moment, he didn't move. He simply sat there, absorbing the weight of 10,000 stares, the silent pressure of the challenge. The giant screens held his impassive face in a tight close-up. His manager, Leo, was having a minor meltdown. Don't, Steven. Don't you dare, he hissed, his face pale. This is insane. It's a circus. You have nothing to prove to this cartoon character. But Seagal wasn't listening to Leo. He was looking at Gunnar, a man so convinced of his own physical form that he had ceased to understand any other kind of power. Seagal gave a single, almost imperceptible nod. It wasn't to Leo, or to the crowd. It was to himself. Then, with a slowness that commanded more attention than any sudden movement could, he stood up. The crowd erupted. A wave of sound, a mixture of shocked shouts, nervous laughter, and chants of Seagal. Seagal rolled through the arena. The atmosphere was electric, charged with the thrill of the completely unexpected. As Seagal walked toward the stage steps, the crowd parted for him like the sea before a prophet. Phones were held aloft, a forest of tiny screens desperate to capture the unfolding history. Event organizers in headsets rushed around in a panic, their carefully planned schedule now a smoldering ruin. One of them intercepted Seagal's manager. Leo, you can't let him do this. Our insurance doesn't cover this, the young organizer pleaded. Leo Vance just shook his head, a look of utter resignation on his face. Son, he said, his voice heavy. When he gets that look in his eye, you don't stop him. You just get out of the way. On stage, Gunnar's coach, an older, wiry man named Pete, grabbed his fighter's arm. Gunnar, what are you doing? Pete's voice was urgent, laced with a fear his young champion couldn't comprehend. Call it off. Say it was a joke. You don't know who you are dealing with. Relax, Pete, Gunnar shrugged him off, his ego inflated by the crowd's roar. I'm not gonna hurt him. It's just a lesson. This is branding gold. Pete stepped back, his face ashen. He had seen tapes of the old masters. He recognized the unnerving calm in Seagal's eyes. It was the stillness of a deep lake, and he knew that still waters ran dangerously deep. Seagal reached the stage, ascending the steps with an unhurried, fluid grace. He didn't acknowledge the frantic officials or the cheering crowd. As his feet touched the stage floor, he moved directly toward the white circle, his gaze locked on Gunnar. The brash champion, for the first time, felt a prickle of doubt. The calm confidence radiating from the older man was not what he had expected. It wasn't fear, it wasn't anger, it was nothing. It was an absence of predictable emotion that was more unsettling than any threat. The two men now stood on opposite sides of the white circle, a living tableau of two warring philosophies. The mountain and the master. Brute force and unseen flow. Last chance to back out, old man, Gunnar's voice boomed, a final attempt to project the bravado that was beginning to crack. He planted his feet in the center of the circle, crossing his colossal arms. He looked less like a man and more like a stone statue bolted to the floor, an embodiment of immovable mass. Steven Seagal offered no reply. He stepped into the circle. His movements were minimalist, economical. There was no wasted energy, no theatrical preparation. He simply closed the distance. The entire hall held its breath. This was the moment. Seagal's first move was so subtle, most people missed it. He didn't lunge or push. He simply reached out and placed his hand lightly on Gunnar's massive, tree trunk of a wrist. The contact was gentle, almost casual. Gunnar let out a short, derisive laugh. "Is that it? You gonna tickle me into submission?" In the broadcast booth, Marcus Thorne chuckled along. "See? It's a joke. What's he gonna do? The size difference is just too immense. This is basic physics, people." But Chloe Lim was leaning closer to her monitor, her brow furrowed. "Wait, look at Gunnar's hand." Seagal's fingers, with no apparent effort, applied a slight, almost invisible twist to Gunnar's wrist. It wasn't a contest of strength. It was a precise manipulation, based on the Aikido principle of kotegeshi. A shock of sharp, unfamiliar pain shot up Gunnar's arm. It wasn't overwhelming, but it was deeply unsettling, a foreign signal in a body that only knew the language of power. The giant's smirk vanished, replaced by a flicker of confused shock. His body instinctively tried to pull back from the source of pain, a micro-adjustment that shifted his weight ever so slightly. He had taken the bait. Before Gunnar could process the first sensation, Seagal's other hand moved. It didn't strike, it simply met Gunnar's elbow. Again, the contact was light, but the placement was perfect. With a gentle but firm pressure, Seagal guided the elbow upward, exploiting the involuntary recoil he had just created. Gunnar's perfectly solid posture began to compromise. To resist the pressure on his elbow, his shoulder was forced to dip, and to compensate for that, his hips had to unlock. The mountain was beginning to teeter. What is he doing?" Marcus stammered in the booth, his confidence evaporating. "Gunnar's off balance." "He's not fighting Gunnar's strength," Chloe said, her voice filled with awe. "He's using it. He's turning Gunnar's own body against him." On the stage, panic was dawning in Gunnar's eyes. He felt his immense weight, his greatest asset, becoming a terrifying liability. His foundation was crumbling from within, all due to a series of touches that felt no heavier than a handshake. He tried to plant his feet, to use his raw power to resist, but he was no longer in control of his own center of gravity. He was a puppet, and Seagal was holding the strings. Then came the final, almost insultingly simple, move. As Gunnar's body tilted forward, his balance completely broken, Seagal swept his foot in a small, neat arc and gently tapped the giant's ankle. It wasn't a kick. It was a period at the end of a sentence. For a heartbeat, Gunnar seemed suspended in time, his face a mask of utter disbelief. Then, gravity, the force he claimed to master, took over. He didn't fall backward from a blow. He collapsed forward, his own immense weight pulling him down like a felled tree. The crash was deafening. The stage shook as 350 pounds of bewildered muscle and shattered ego hit the canvas with a resounding thud. The mountain had fallen. For 3 seconds, an absolute, deafening silence blanketed the Titan Fitness Expo. 10,000 people, along with millions watching at home, were locked in a state of collective cognitive dissonance. Their minds simply could not process what their eyes had just seen. The immovable object had been moved. The unbreakable force had been broken, without a single ounce of opposing force being used. Then, the silence shattered. It started not as a cheer, but as a wave of pure, unadulterated shock, a sound of 10,000 people exclaiming, "Whoa," at once. This wave crested and broke into a roar, a thunderous, sustained ovation unlike any Gunnar's ego-fueled antics had ever earned. It was a sound of respect. A sound of witnessing the impossible made possible. On the stage, chaos erupted. Paramedics, who had been on standby for a potential strength-related injury, rushed toward the fallen giant. Event officials swarmed the circle, chattering into their headsets, trying to reclaim control of a situation that had gone gloriously off-script. In the center of it all, Seagal stood for a moment, looking down. His expression was not one of triumph or satisfaction. It was the neutral, detached look of a craftsman who had just completed a technical task flawlessly. He looked at Gunnar, now being helped into a sitting position by his horrified coach, his face a canvas of shame and utter confusion, and gave a slow, almost imperceptible nod. It was an acknowledgement, not a taunt. A lesson delivered. Then, he turned. With the same unhurried calm he had displayed all evening, he walked out of the white circle, past the stunned officials, and toward the stage steps. He adjusted the collar of his silk jacket, a man who had just restored a fundamental balance to the universe. In the broadcast booth, Marcus Thorne had taken off his headset. He was just staring, his mouth agape. All his axioms about power and strength, all his life's beliefs, had been dismantled in 30 seconds. Chloe Lim finally found her voice, speaking into the live microphone with a tremor of awe. "Ladies and gentlemen, I don't think we just saw a stunt. I think we just saw truth. The truth that true power isn't about how much force you can exert. It's about how little you need." As Seagal descended the steps, his manager Leo rushed to his side, no longer looking stressed but simply dumbfounded. The crowd was on its feet, the applause and chants of "Seagal! Seagal! Seagal!" shaking the very foundations of the building. He didn't pump his fist or wave to the crowd. He simply walked, a figure of serene authority moving through a storm of his own creation, and disappeared into the backstage corridor, leaving a legend freshly minted in his wake. The clip, filmed from a dozen different angles, was more than viral, it was a cultural event. Dubbed the Takedown, it dominated social media for weeks. It was analyzed by physicists, debated by philosophers, and memed into infinity. It became a digital parable for a generation, a perfect metaphor for brains over brawn, strategy over brute force, and humility over hubris. Gunnar Bjornsson disappeared from the public eye. He deleted his social media, his bombastic online persona vanishing overnight. The tabloid speculated he was broken, his career finished. Then, 6 months later, a grainy cell phone video surfaced on a small martial arts forum. It showed a massive, bearded man in a plain white GI, standing in the back of a small, traditional Aikido dojo in a quiet suburb. He was struggling, his movements clumsy, as he tried to learn the basic principles of balance from a patient, elderly instructor. It was unmistakably Gunnar. He wasn't training for a competition, he was just trying to understand. In a quiet, minimalist home in Arizona, Steven Seagal ended a phone call with his manager, Leo. "You saw the video, right?" Leo's voice was still filled with a lingering sense of disbelief, even after all these months. "The big guy. He's actually learning." Seagal was looking out the window at the desert landscape, where ancient, unmovable rock formations stood in silent testament to time. "Pride is a heavy burden, Leo," he said, his voice calm. He just needed someone to help him put it down. "You could have signed a dozen endorsement deals after that night," Leo mused. "We could have launched a whole new brand. Seagal-style strength, or something." Seagal turned from the window, a faint, knowing smile on his lips. "Some lessons aren't for sale. True strength is never loud. It doesn't need to be. It simply is." That night at the expo, two definitions of power collided. One was built on noise, spectacle, and dominating others. The other was built on silence, discipline, and mastering oneself. In the end, it was silence that spoke the loudest. So, what do you think? Was this a lesson in physics, or a lesson in philosophy? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We love reading all the different perspectives, but please, always comment with respect for everyone's opinion. And if this story moved you, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because you won't want to miss the story we have for you next.